Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 2 of our Secure AI series. You are very, very welcome. And of course, as always, I hope you learned something new from this series. Judging from the response to the first video, I just want to say thank you very, very much. As a result, we will be uploading 2 episodes a week because people really, really like the first episode. So, again, very much appreciated. And of course, any questions, please, please, please don't be afraid to leave a comment or even just message me on LinkedIn as well. So that being said, kicking this off, we were talking about trainable classifiers. Okay, so we're taking a step up from episode 1, where we talked about SITs and pattern-based logic, like our regexes, like our keywords. Today, we're going to be talking about a much, much more tailored way of classifying our data. Okay, and I guess it can be a bit intimidating for some organizations when they talk about trainable classifiers, and they're like, "There's a lot of work involved there. How long is this going to take?" But we're going to break it down. We're going to talk about the fundamentals so that we can understand the fundamentals, and it becomes a lot clearer for people to even implement in their own organization or build for themselves. So that being said, kicking it off, the agenda, we're going to talk about what is it, why do they matter, how do we actually use them, and then a very brief sort of CDX demo in terms of where you can go in your own Purview environment and have some fun, right? Because again, Purview, it's really, really good at testing and building, and users don't have to be impacted. Okay, so whether you're building it for yourself and you're just your own tenant, or you're working for an organization and you have a responsibility to classify or protect your data, right, with regulation coming in, such as the EU AI Act, right, which is going to be enforced in stages in 2026, but I'll make a separate video about that. Organizations are going to be asked, how are we protecting our data? How are we classifying our data? And the key word there is our data, okay? And that's where trainable classifiers come in, right? It's your data, right? So what I mean by that is, what is it, right? So it learns from sample documents to recognize your context, okay? So your HR forms, your contracts, your client secret information, your API keys, whatever it is that you're looking to protect for your organization or for your department, right? Whether it's marketing, finance, you name it, you can protect it with a trainable classifier, okay? Because it's your data, right? And it's using machine learning, it's using NLP, or natural language processing. So rather than, again, episode 1, we talked about regexes and keyword logic, right? It's identifying the meaning and intent behind your document. So it's really, really powerful, okay? It can help Purview, classify unstructured or super complex data that, pattern-based logic realistically can't detect. Okay, a lot of organizations, the bigger the organization, the more data that you have. Okay, and the less data that you have, the easier it is to protect, right? But that's an ideal world. Okay, the reality is a lot of organizations have a lot of data and they don't know how to protect it because it's so complicated. There's different headers, there's different footers, there's different pieces of identification in every document. Okay, so what we do, or what Microsoft have done a very, 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 very good job, if I may add as well, is that they've made a concept or a technology, right, called a trainable classifier that essentially allows you as an organization or as an individual to feed a tailored document, whether it could be anything, right? It could be your own personal documents that you want to protect, but they're personal to you and they're personal to your department, and then you can classify that based off meaning and intent. Okay, so a nice way to sum it up is that a trainable classifier teaches Purview about what your organization's unique data is. Okay, and unique and your organization is a very, very key theme to this episode. Okay, because it's very, very tailored. Okay, and that's really important to take away. So why should we care? Okay, so as I said, they build on what sits there. Okay, so whatever you're looking at, whether it's a pattern-based logic technology, or whether it's, again, a trainable classifier, an AI-driven technology, the point is we need to know where to start. Okay, so SITs are great, right? They have their use cases, right? They're very, very easy to implement. Even building custom SITs, when we're looking at regexes, it's not that difficult. Trainable classifiers can complement that pattern-based detection. Okay, so you can use trainable classifiers in conjunction with a SIT for your DLP policies, right? For your auto labeling policies, right? You don't have to use them independently, and that's where people and organizations can get really lovely, true positive results back. Because again, the whole purpose of what we're trying to build here is true positive detection. Okay, we want to enforce our policies to make sure that whatever alerts we're getting back, they are a real data breach, or they are a real data concern. Okay, because people are busy, they have enough going on, right? The point of technology is that it enables us to do our job better. It enables us to do our job faster, right? It's not that there's no point in investing all your time and money into building, DLP policies and buying, different licensing when it's just causing your, IT team more of a headache. Okay, so we have to know where to start so that we can get to a place of, a lot of true positives. You're never going to get 100% true positives, even with a trainable classifier, but 95%, 96%, 97% is very, very realistic, right? And that leads on to point two. They improve confidence and control. Okay, so learning from real data, learning from your own organizational data, because again, we're not building any pattern-based logic here, right? Like a SIT, right? We're not going in and configuring anything in terms of trying to build a regex or a keyword list. We're actually giving it our own data, right? And that's really, really useful for reducing false positives. And it also ensures that our policies can target the right information. And point three, which I think is often overlooked, and it's probably a really important point with all the regulation coming in, is that they evolve with your organization. Okay, so they adapt to new document types, new regulations, right? New architectures, new frameworks, right? So as your business changes over time and the processes change over time, trainable classifiers also do the same, right? They're designed to make your life easier, right? Not make it more difficult and add more work. And how do we use them? Okay, so three simple steps, right? First, we have to start with, well, what the hell are we giving a trainable classifier? Okay, so a good range that I often give organizations is that try to find 50 to 60, right, representative documents or seed documents, right? That's the industry term that we use, right? And understand, right, if I upload 50 true positives or documents that I want to classify, I wanted to protect, and 50 false positives or documents that I don't want it to classify and don't want it to protect, that's a really, really good starting point, okay? Because what happens is a trainable classifier can now distinguish between, right, what do I classify versus what do I not classify, right? And once we do that, right, we can give it I think it's 48 hours, right, for it to run and test, but then we can view the results, right, make sure that whatever it decided to classify, it's the right document, and whatever it didn't decide to classify, right, it's also the right document. Okay, and then once we validate it again, we can add it into our auto labeling policies or DLP policies to capture those complex or context driven data as well. Okay, so with that being said, we're going to kick off into our CDX environment. And again, as I said in episode one, not everyone is going to have access to a CDX environment. You can do this in your own tenant. You can do this in your organization as well. Because again, guys, we're just testing, right? We're just understanding the foundations. Users will not be affected, okay? And that's really, really important to know, right? I know it can be kind of scary in technology and you're clicking buttons and you're like, oh crap, are my users being affected? I can guarantee you, right? We're just testing, right? We're just building the foundations, okay? So I'm in the Purview portal. I've already got the classifier tab spun up, right? You can see it's beside our sensitive info types. It's beside our EDM classifiers as well, which is exact data match classifiers, which will be the next episode we'll talk about. Okay, but let's focus on trainable classifiers for now. So Microsoft have 113 or 114 built in already that can be used by yourself as an organization. Okay, so similar to what we talked about with SITs, right? Organizations having over whatever it was, 300 plus that they can use from out of the box, right? Microsoft has done a very good job with training up their own classifiers. And again, they're all self-explanatory, whether it's actuary reports, whether it's compliance policies, credit reports, etc. But what I want to focus on for you guys is actually just starting from scratch, right? Building a trainable classifier and understanding the foundations of what we're looking at, because it's not that complicated, okay? So if I open up this tab, and again, we're probably at the mercy of Purview here, so if it is slow, please forgive me. So let's call this, as an example, complicated children data. Okay, so if you're a government organization, you're an organization that deals often with children data, and it's very, very sensitive, and you've got retention policies that are indefinite, and it can be very, very difficult to classify, right? That's where trainable classifiers can be very, very useful. Okay, so complicated children data, again, you can enter whatever description you want to enter. It's completely up to yourself. If we go next. Okay, so as I said before, guys, source of the positive sample content. Okay, so it's pretty self-explanatory. What sensitive children data do we want to classify, right? Do we want to target in our DLP policies, okay? Now, Microsoft have our default here. We have 50 to 500 files. I like to do 50 to 60, right? Unless you have, 500 true positive files in a SharePoint site or folder that you can, upload confidently, absolutely brilliant, because the more information we can give a trainable classifier, the more accurate the results are going to be. However, I'm being realistic, and I try to do 50 to 60 per organization just as a starting point. The minimum, I would say, has to be 50. Okay, you can go lower, of course, but it's not as accurate. Okay, so we can choose our SharePoint sites, and again, the nice thing about a CDX environment is that we'll just have random sites here that are populated or not populated, right? Again, everyone's going to be different. So we have, let's just, again, purely hypothetical, we'll just pretend that global sales has 50 to 500 files of positive sample data that we're looking to give the classifier. So again, the key point here is Mr. Classifier, please, look at this SharePoint site. There's a bunch of folders in here that contain children data that I want you to target in our DLP policy or our auto labeling policy. These are stuff that's really, really sensitive. Please classify this, okay? So what we do is we move on to the negative sample content. Okay, so again, pretty self-explanatory. Mr. Classifier, please do not classify, right, these documents, because these are not children data. Okay, this is stuff that we do not want to protect. And again, how do you distinguish what's positive and what's negative? Okay, often what I like to do is what could replicate that data. Okay, what's similar to that data in your organization? Okay, you can pretty much put any negative sample content in here. Right? It could be credit card numbers and usernames and passwords, right? But it's smart enough to know not to classify that. So what you need to do is look for documents or look for information that could be easily replicated as children data, okay? Or it could be like there could be a certain pattern that is common in an organization that, is very, very similar, but they're two very, very different documents, right? And that's also a big selling point for a trainable classifier, is that it gives you the option to make that distinction, okay? So again, hypothetical scenario, let's just pretend that benefits, right, is the SharePoint site with the folders that we're looking to, not classify or a negative sample content. Again, we can choose as many sites as we want, guys, right? It doesn't need to be one site, right? It can be multiple sites. It's really up to yourself how much data you want. And again, we're still in the testing phase, right? No users are going to be affected. So again, very end process, right? The name of the description, the positive sample content, and the negative sample content will create this trainable classifier. Now, it will take 48 hours, guys. I'm just going to reiterate that a lot of this, right, you will need to review and we will need to test, okay? But we have the foundation, right? We know how to build one. We know how to upload the seed content, right? If you're familiar with Minecraft, when you're looking at building a Minecraft server, right, you're giving it a seed, right? So you're distinguishing, right, how is this server going to look, right? So you can compare it to that for any of my fellow Minecraft nerds out there. So we have our published ones. If I close this down and I go to training, right, and I click on complicated children data, and if I just push this out into a new window, we're going to see that nothing's loaded yet, right? Because again, I just want you to see for your own organization, just so you can see that it will take 48 hours and you're not wondering, oh no, did I do something wrong or did I configure something wrong? It's completely normal. So again, we'll just let Purview load up and do its thing. But again, the brilliant thing about this, guys, is that you can have a look at the out-of-the-box ones that Microsoft have built. Okay, they're great. There's a lot of good information there as well, and they also give you a guiding process in terms of how you can add them into your DLP policies and auto labeling policies as well. Okay, so again, please wait for the model to finish training. Training will approximately take 48 hours, and please check back later, and then you can review the test results, okay? Okay, guys, I'm going to stop the video here. I really hope you found it useful. And again, we're just starting with the foundations, okay? How this technology works. And as the series progresses, we'll be doing more advanced demos and even looking at some live results as well. The next episode, we'll be talking about EDMs, right? Which again is a part of our classifier family, right? Exact data matches and how to distinguish them between a trainable classifier and the SIT, when to use them. And again, talking about the foundations and how this technology works, okay? So thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.